I've drummed it into our players that they are privileged to play for you.
Corner taken quickly, Origi!
And mission impossible is accomplished. It's 7 for Liverpool. Sensational, astonishing, incredible.
Du hører på Pausepraten, en podcast fra Liverpool supporterklubb Norge. Sommeren er her, men there's no rest for the wicked, som man sier. Velkommen til liverpool.no Pausepraten. Jeg heter Mari Lunde. Jeg har med meg Jens Bessesen og David Lynch i dag, så det blir en episode som stort sett vil gå på engelsk, så beklager på forhånd hvis noen er sånn ukomfortabel med det, eller om man synes det er ubehagelig å høre to nordmenn prøve å snakke engelsk. Hvis du ikke er kjent med David, så jobber han som journalist tett på Liverpool FC de siste 15 årene, bakgrunn blant annet fra klubbens eget mediehus, og han har skrevet en spalte på liverpool.no blant annet de siste 5 årene. Og vi har fått inn veldig mange lyttespørsmål til David, men det er en ting vi faktisk ikke har fått noen spørsmål om direkte, og det er Alexander Isak. Men det er noe jeg lurer på, så derfor stiller vi dette spørsmålet likevel. For det er jo en het potet som David dekket i en spalte for oss i går, altså på mandag. Alexander Isak, David, I feel like it's only natural to start there with Isak. What do we know? Is it completely unrealistic to dream of seeing him playing in the Liverpool Red next season?
I think I would, if you'd asked me this maybe 2 months ago, I would have said, yeah, definitely realistic, because you look at all the factors that are there. Newcastle qualifying for the Champions League. They just won a trophy. He had 3 years remaining on his contract still. So they just looked in an incredibly strong position to me to reject any interest in him. You would obviously accept that Liverpool would have some sort of interest in a player who is that good and the age he is. But it didn't really look realistic to me at all. And yet, as time's gone on and we got closer to this point, it just seems to be becoming more and more realistic as the weeks pass, really, because I think what you've seen from Newcastle is maybe a softening of their stance, really, from when they did qualify for the Champions League. It was like, hands off, there's no chance we have to sell him now. It's absolutely fine to, we're a little bit worried about a bid coming in at this point, and maybe we would sell him, but it'd be for a ridiculous fee. So that is a clear softening of their stance. And I think from the Liverpool side of things as well is that, they do quite like to kind of shoot down any links that there's no truth in, because it doesn't help them to go about their business quietly if there's this speculation kind of raging in the background. But we just haven't seen that with the Isak story. Nobody at Liverpool is kind of shooting it down, which makes you think that there is certainly something there beyond just the fact that they admire him as a player. They clearly think there is some small possibility. Like I say, all those hurdles to a deal exist. It would be crazy money. Liverpool have to raise that through sales as well to get there and make that realistic. But the fact that nobody's shooting it down, for me, says an awful lot. And the fact that Newcastle themselves seem to be softening on the stance, it just feels like a distinct possibility over the next few weeks that we see something actually concrete happen with that, which, as I say, is absolutely not what I expected coming into the summer.
Has Isak himself given any indication of what he wants to do?
Well, I think that's going to come when he goes back to pre-season training. I think there's going to be conversations there and a kind of indication. And I think for Liverpool, because he does have those 3 years left in his contract, he's going to have to push. It's going to maybe be a little bit messy the way he's going to have to go about it if Liverpool are going to make anything of it. But I think, again, if he'd indicated to Liverpool he had no interest whatsoever in making this move, then that would have been out there now. And as I say, Liverpool wouldn't want to be, making a fool of themselves in the market, and they would be shutting this link down. But because they're not doing it, I think you've got an indication there that the player is showing some keenness. Just how keen he is, I think we're going to learn that over the next few weeks in terms of how hard does he push? What does he say to Newcastle when he goes back? But I think as a starting point, there's obviously some desire to join Liverpool, which of course is not a surprise, is it? Given they've just won the league and they want to compete to win the biggest honours again next season.
So we've spoken about this in the past, but what price are we looking at someone like him?
Well, Newcastle said, didn't he? I mean, you saw recent reports that said 200 million, and I would say that would just not be a goer for Liverpool. They wouldn't be interested at that price. It's too much. I know they're going to raise some funds through sales, and they are showing a tendency now to spend big, as we've seen with Florian Wirtz. But anything near to 200 is absolutely ridiculous. I think you've got to be looking at something south of 150 for it to be realistic. And I think Newcastle will, as a starting point in negotiations, maybe we'll say 150, and Liverpool will see if they can work them down from that. But as I say, there's kind of a lot has got to happen before we get to that point. Yeah. But I think, as I say, I think a realistic price point looks at for Liverpool is something kind of south of 150.
Ja. Vi har jo fått inn veldig mange spørsmål fra lyttere som vil vite både det ene og andre. Vi har fått et spørsmål fra Bård som jeg tenkte Jens skal få starte med. Eller Jens, answer this one first. Who do you want to come in as a striker if Nunez leaves?
Probably just Isak for me, because I don't think there's many appealing strikers in the market. So that's kind of, if they're going to buy someone, I think it should be Isak, or else just don't buy a striker at all and try to figure it out with the players that are already there. And you said yesterday as well, David, that the signing of Isak depends on sales of probably Nunez and Diaz. And now it looks more difficult to sell Nunez than maybe the club thought initially. And of course they rejected the bid in January from Saudi, and I was wondering if they maybe regret that now, because it looks like it's not going to be easy to get even 40 million for him.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Nunez. I doubt they regret it, because the reason that they did it was kind of, look, we want to keep the squad together till the end of the season to win titles. I mean, one of the things that sometimes gets levelled at FSG, although maybe not after this summer, is the idea that they're always thinking about the money rather than what's happening on the pitch. Well, that was a footballing decision made on the basis of kind of keep him around to help us win the title. And at the end of the day, you look at the goals at Brentford, you look at the goal against Southampton that kind of turned that game on its head. It was a good decision and the right one, I think. So I think they probably accepted at the time there was a possibility they were going to have to kind of eat it a little bit and accept less money this time around than they were being offered in January. But you get the prize money from winning the Premier League. It is the aim at the end of the day, is to win the trophy. So I don't think they regret it. And I would say as well, on the reports around Napoli at the moment, I wouldn't be too downbeat about what that kind of says about the possibility of selling him. The fact that they're still in talks says a lot. The fact that there's so much talk around this alternative target who they could complete the deal for as soon as they want to. Well, they're not doing it, which to me suggests that that's just a negotiating tool and kind of using that as a bargaining chip to kind of put pressure on Liverpool. So Napoli is still there. The clubs are apart in their valuation, but the talks are ongoing, which suggests there's room for compromise. And I think if Liverpool could get something kind of close to 50 million, they would be absolutely happy with that when you consider the player's book value and the fact that that's not a bad fee at all. So and that would allow them to reinvest. So there's still some way to go in that story. I'd say I don't think they'll be too worried just yet.
Do you think a striker will be signed if Nunez is sold, or?
What's interesting about that, I think, in terms of it being an out-and-out striker, is I totally agree with you in terms of the market is a little bit of a strange one. I think Isak is an absolute home run, and you can see why there's clear interest there. But outside of that, you've kind of got question marks over everybody else. So Ekitike, there's a rawness there, I think, in his game. I think similarly of Seshko, to be honest. Gyökeres is scoring goals in the Portuguese league, and a lot of penalties, and we know that doesn't necessarily translate to the Premier League. So a lot of the strikers that are on the market, there's question marks over. And I do wonder whether, if they can't get Isak and that deal proves to be kind of impossible in the end, whether the alternative is to look at a kind of a different type of forward, to maybe go back to the interest in Anthony Gordon, or for example, and play him off the left wing, maybe use Wirtz in the number 9 role as a kind of false 9. I think they've got options there in terms of how they approach it, really. So I just wonder if that's going to be the approach, because I think they know that they need another elite forward to kind of kick them on next season. But they've also shown in the past that they're flexible in how they kind of do that. So you think back to missing out on Zubamendi and deciding that Ryan Gravenberch is the solution to that problem. So I think they'll take a flexible approach to it. I can't say that it's going to definitely be an out-and-out number 9, but I do expect Nunez to be replaced in some way, yes.
Yes. Thomas Vedøy writes, out in Europe, there are so many young strikers and good right-footed centre-backs positions that Liverpool need to strengthen. How is the club thinking around this? We have all heard mentions of who you've already mentioned, Ekitike and Guehi, but there are so many good prospects out there. Do you know of anyone else that the club are looking at? And you've already touched on the strikers there, but maybe centre-backs, are there anyone else that you think they're looking at?
Just on strikers in terms of outline contact, I do hear a persistent rumour from people I kind of tend to trust that there has at least been some sort of contact with Osimhen. Now whether that's going to turn into anything, his wage demands would have had to come way down from the last time he spoke to Liverpool. But it feels telling to me that there's some talks there. So they're clearly assessing an awful lot of options in the striking position, and I expect them to take a kind of similar approach in centre half. What I can't kind of work out about the centre half thing, obviously we know about Marc Guehi, he's definitely on the list and someone they like, and those talks are ongoing this week, so we'll see whether something comes of that. But he doesn't quite fit that kind of profile of young centre half that I know Liverpool have been looking at for quite a while. So we know there was interest in Lenny Yoro, for example. He was a player that they liked. Levi Colwill a couple of seasons ago. Obviously, they keep being linked to Kontakt, who I think is, again, similarly that kind of very young centre half. So I think they clearly want someone who is in that bracket of, teenager, kind of 20, 21, who could come in and develop slowly. Hato's another one, definitely a player who they like at Ajax. But again, they haven't pulled the trigger yet. I don't know, it makes me kind of cynical of whether they are going to in the end. But I think centre-halves, they're definitely looking at that profile. Now, Guehi doesn't fit it, so I just wonder whether there's kind of something ongoing here in terms of potential readying themselves for a Joe Gomez departure or, that kind of thing going on. We will have to see, but those are a couple of names. Definitely Hato is being looked at. I wouldn't be surprised if there was truth in the Kontakt links. So they're definitely looking at that profile alongside it as centre-half, which is someone who could come in, maybe wouldn't demand a load of minutes initially, but could develop slowly and kind of become a big part of the team in time.
I was thinking with Guehi that maybe it's the plan if Konate leaves next summer on a free because he's in the last year, and what we're reading so far is that the negotiations are not going very well or not going forward. So maybe that could be an option to maybe plan for replacing him for free, make that less hurtful if he goes to Madrid or PSG or something.
Yeah, I wonder the same, to be honest, because it kind of doesn't make sense to me otherwise in terms of how you make that, you level off doing all this and getting Guehi in and then, you also want this young centre-half alongside as well. How do you kind of share out the minutes and make that work? And maybe there is a fear on Liverpool's side that they're not going to kind of get it done with Konate. I mean, if you ask anyone at Liverpool, they're still saying talks are ongoing, we'll see how it goes. They point to the fact that Salah signed late in the season, so did Virgil van Dijk when they were very close to the expiry of the contract. So they're not giving out any kind of fears at the moment or making you think that it's absolutely impossible that they get a deal done with Konate. But as you say, it's just interesting with Guehi's profile and the fact that he's clearly being assured that there are minutes there. And we have seen before in the past, actually, I think of Gini Wijnaldum when he was a year out from his contract. Thiago was still signed, which was just to kind of get ahead of it. So, maybe we're seeing a similar thing here with what's going on at centre-half.
Speaking of centre-halves, Rune Slåra, han har egentlig ikke et spørsmål, this is more like an observation from Rune. He writes, I think Liverpool buys players for way too high a price while they sell for too low a price. They should have gotten more for Quansah, considering they're paying such a high price for Wirtz. Quansah is a young, promising player, and if they sell Harvey Elliott as well, they need to get a really good price. He's also young and very promising. We used to always think of it the other way around, didn't we? That Liverpool used to get loads of money back for sometimes slightly unproven players even. What do you think of this? Has it changed? And should we have got more for Quansah?
I think the aim going into this window, I think it's fair to say that the price on Quansah is on the low side, and Liverpool would kind of agree in the sense that, you know, they went into this window saying that 50 million was the price tag. Obviously, they knew they were never going to get 50 million, but the expectation was if that's your starting point in negotiations, there's a chance then to get kind of 45 million, and everyone would be kind of happy with that. Obviously, what they accepted in the end was much lower, but I think in terms of mitigation for that, what they would say is the only reason they would accept that lower fee from Bayer Leverkusen in the end was the buyback clause, because you know that's the only thing that is worthy of kind of lopping another 10 million off, because what you are saying there is you essentially could be loaning him to Bayer Leverkusen for a couple of years. If he develops into what Liverpool think he might with a few more games under his belt, which he wasn't going to get at Liverpool, then that buyback clause is there to be triggered, and you're getting yourself a bargain for him, really. So they would argue that that's the reason that they kind of lopped a little bit off the price tag in the end. And you know, maybe there's scope to do something similar around Harvey Elliott, although the thing I would say that makes that unlikely, actually, that a buyback clause will be inserted there, is that a lot of the interest in him is from Premier League clubs, and they have got a lot of money, we know. So I think they're more likely to get a better fee for Harvey Elliott, but won't have that buyback clause included in the deal. And that's the deal you've got to kind of make sometimes. And the trade-offs really is, if you can't get that buyback clause, then get more money initially. They weren't able to do that with Quansah, with it being a German club and not being as wealthy, but they did get the buyback clause in the end. So, you know, you've just got to cut those deals sometimes. And I don't think they did too badly in the end out of that one.
Do you know if Quansah was the one who pushed for the transfer, or if the club initiated it?
Yeah, I kind of wrote this a while ago, actually. The people would kind of be surprised how much Quansah wanted to go, really. You think, you know, you're a young player, you know, you've got the opportunity there playing for Liverpool, they're winning trophies, but he just wasn't happy with the amount of minutes he was getting, not because he thought he was better than Van Dijk or Konate. It wasn't an arrogance or anything like that, but he knows, and I think he was right to think this, that he wasn't going to become the best version of himself if he just continued to get minutes in the League Cup. He was coming in completely out of rhythm and struggling in games. So he was a real driver for that transfer this summer, which, you know, you don't necessarily expect from academy graduates. But I think it was the right call for him, and I think it was the right call from Liverpool as well to let him go, because, you know, he wasn't coming in and playing particularly well either, because, you know, he's going months without games or a few weeks, and the rhythm's not there. So I think everyone got the best out of this, really, in the end, in that he's gone to somewhere he'll play a lot. Seen a lot of English players, young English players, thrive in Germany as well. So it seems like a good setup for him to go there and do well. And if he does really, really well, then Liverpool have always got that option to bring him back as well.
But it's difficult to replace someone like him who's proven that he can play on the level and still can be a squad player, like Tsimikas or someone who just seems happy to sit on the bench. It's not easy to build a squad, especially when you have Konate and Van Dijk, who you know are going to play most of the time.
This is what fascinates me about the Guehi thing, really, is how have they sold this to him? I mean, they clearly have, because I think it would be dead in the water already if they hadn't, really. They've clearly made the sales pitch to him that he's willing to accept. I was told a couple of days ago he hasn't quite had the sit down with Arne Slot, but clearly talks are ongoing at a sporting director level with Guehi to tell him roughly and outline what the plan is for him. So, I'm not sure how they make that work. And as you say, it is difficult to get those players in who can fulfill that role. That's why, ideally, I think that the profile Liverpool would be seeking is someone, as I say, who's a teenager to kind of 21, who you know doesn't necessarily demand all those minutes and is happy to be at Liverpool, developing in the League Cup and getting minutes in the FA Cup, playing the odd Premier League game here and there. That would be the ideal profile for them, really. And as you say, it's kind of tough to find that. So that's a task they've got to kind of fulfill this summer now, is to get someone in who can play that role, whether that be Guehi, but with a bit more of a rotation ongoing in those roles. We'll have to see. But it's it is tough to replace squad players, and it's why someone like Kostas Tsimikas is so valuable, because I think he's a left back of a very, very decent level who is absolutely shown himself to be willing to sit on the bench for a lot of the season. They don't come around very often, those types.
But it's been said as well that Slot prefers a smaller squad maybe than than Klopp did. And we saw that last season as well. He didn't rotate as much in the important games. So that's maybe a strategy to not have maybe 4 players in each, or 2 players in each position.
Yeah, and I think we'll maybe see that actually in the forward line this summer. Is that I just cannot imagine that we're going to see the end of this summer window come with Liverpool having 6 frontline forwards as they did last season. It just feels like too much. I think, with the they didn't need to rotate because they weren't getting as many injuries as they were under Jurgen. So it just made little sense in the end, and nobody's going to come and play the Chiesa role next season. Nobody's going to find that appealing. So it just makes sense to have 5 of unbelievable quality who will all be able to share out the minutes. And then your next cab off the rank almost is Rio Engamoa, who can kind of come in and pick up significant minutes then in the League Cup. I think that's better for the young players. I think it's better for the squad as a whole, really, in terms of keeping everybody happy. So, I think we are maybe going to see the squad chipped away at a little bit.
What about Harvey Elliott then? What can we expect there? Like, what's the latest news on him?
Yeah, I'm at the kind of point now with this, with what we're hearing, that I'd be quite surprised if he doesn't leave now. Again, you saw his language softening really as the season went on last season. He was very much determined to stay and fight for his place. And then all of a sudden, towards the end of the season, we started to hear him say things like, oh, well, I've got to do what's best for my future and those sorts of things. And, there is massive interest in him. I know Brighton are there for him. Newcastle have got an interest. There's clubs in Germany as well who are keen on him. So the amount of interest that's there for him, the amount of clubs that are going to be able to sell it to him as come and play for us and you're going to play an awful lot of football. It's hard to imagine that he won't find that more appealing than another season sat on the bench at Liverpool, because the manager will be honest as well. That's what's going to happen for him really is, Florian Wirtz can play that 10 position. You've already got Szoboszlai. You're going to add to the forward line where Elliott's never looked a great fit there pace-wise anyway. So his chances of minutes look very, very slim next season. So I would be surprised if he's here. But Liverpool won't be giving him away. And again, I think the 50 million price tag as a starting point in negotiations is probably what they're going to be aiming for.
I saw some people say that if he was a Brighton player now and he had to play that tournament, people would want Liverpool to buy him. But
yeah, no, it's right. He's an unbelievable player. It's just a shame, and I kind of wish Liverpool could find a workaround for this, but they can't find a way to shoehorn him into the team, because I think the one thing Slot thinks there is that he's not quite yet at the level where he completely can overshadow his physical deficits, which is that he's not the quickest, he's not the strongest, and he's not the tallest. And you've got to almost be kind of David Silva level of quality on the ball. And as good as he is, he's not quite there yet. Maybe he will get there with game time. And that's the interesting thing when he goes elsewhere. I do expect him to flourish, but Liverpool is not the environment at the moment for him to kind of fully realise his potential, which is a shame. But it also means that coming off the back of a tournament like that, all the experience he's already got in the Premier League as well, they should be asking for a pretty hefty fee for him.
Yes, we received a very good question, I think, from Ole Aasen. He's written, 25 years ago, Gerard Houllier sold what felt like an entire English national team. Is Arne Slot repeating history? After a season where almost none of our young academy players got a chance to play much for the first team, I'm wondering what kind of signals that has sent to the academy and potential new recruits. It's heartbreaking to see Quansah, Morton and Elliott potentially leaving. Why this massive change from the Klopp era?
Yeah, I think it's a fair criticism, to be honest, of last season. One of the only maybe disappointing aspects of it is that we didn't see more from the academy. I guess Slot would also say, look, I did give Ingamoa his debut. I did use Trey Ione a little bit, but I think under Klopp you would have seen more use of the youth players. I think part of it is a shift in where Liverpool are at the moment. It feels like they've kind of come from being the underdog at the start of the Jurgen Klopp story to, by the end of things, that they now really are amongst the established elite, aren't they? And so the level that they're asking is so high and so difficult for academy players to reach. So I do think that's part of it. And last season, also, maybe a big part of it as well was that Liverpool got this lead in the Premier League, and it was like, right, let's just throw absolutely everything in to getting this over the line. Maybe don't take any risks, and that, that kind of approach, it costs academy players. But I would say you have to see more development towards that next season. We need to see more of the academy players, I think, certainly ones who are good enough, because at the end of the day, the only reason they were able to sign Ngamoa from Chelsea or Trey Naoni from Leicester, who was wanted by all sorts of clubs, Amara Nallo from West Ham, the recruitment domestically has been so good recently because they were renowned as a club that gave opportunities and can show a real pathway. And the moment you stop doing that is the moment you stop being attractive. So I think that's something Liverpool have to consider and the manager has to consider. But Trey Naoni's just signed a new contract yesterday. There's big faith in him. So we'll see. I expect we'll see a bit of him in pre-season and hopefully see more of him as the season progresses. And same with Ngamoa, who is a huge talent. They've got big faith in. So those two in particular, I think, have got a good chance of making more of an impact next season. And I hope they do, because, as I say, I think it says a lot about the club in terms of what it's recruitment at youth level, but also as supporters, we want to see that. We want to see these players making the next step. It's always good to see young players come through, particularly in the case of Naoni is a Liverpool fan and a lifelong Liverpool fan, same as Elliott. So you want to see those kind of guys in the team, don't you? So hopefully it's something they address.
As a supporter, I want Liverpool to win, but not at all costs, because you have to have some kind of, I don't know how to say it, but not just strangers. You need those feel-good stories as well. That's why the League Cup last year was almost felt like a much bigger trophy, and it's kind of risky to the strategy we're seeing this summer. I think wouldn't want that to be the new kind of standard, but so I think it's good if they win, but I have to try to keep the soul of the team as well.
Yeah, you've got to have an identity at the end of the day, and one of the things Liverpool have generally always been good at is getting youth prospects into the team. So, we've yet to see that the new manager can do that effectively. So it's a big test of him, and I'm pretty sure, to be honest, that there will be pressure from above on him to do that as well, though, because FSG and the sporting director and Michael Edwards will know as well that there's value in doing that. You get Quansah into the team so frequently, and that's the reason you can demand a high fee for him, or any of the other youngsters that they sell. So it works for absolutely everybody to do that. So yeah, like I say, I think there is a little bit of pressure to kind of do that next season, and I really hope he does, because it is, as you say, it's important to supporters, and absolutely rightly so. And good to get youngsters through, and particularly if they can as well, local youngsters.
Fredrik Jensen also wants to talk about the academy. He's wondering if there's any big talents currently, or someone like on the brink of first team football. You've already mentioned Trey Naoni and Rio. He's also asking about Sidi, Barama and Daya, who were signed a few weeks ago, but he's not due to come to Liverpool until 2028, I think. Is that right?
I'm not even sure I've seen this deal. Did this maybe happen when I was on holiday, to be honest? I was on holiday a couple of weeks ago, so I might have absolutely missed this one, unfortunately. But in terms of the kids that are coming through, I just think Ngamoa and Naoni are the two that are closest to it at the moment. I saw them in first team training several times last season, so that was a regular thing. That was also true of Jayden Danns when he was fit, but because he had that injury when he went to his loan spell, the expectation is he will go out on another loan move. They'll get a better idea then of where he's up to. Sunderland might be in the mix there, so if you can get a Premier League loan move, that's great. James McConnell is close and appreciated by the manager, but again, spoke to people close to him a couple of weeks ago, and still the expectation there was that he would go on a loan either to kind of championship level or maybe even abroad as well. That is an option for him. So I think Ngamoa and Naoni are the two who are kind of closest to it in terms of we're most likely to maybe see next season. But there's always the case, isn't there, that injuries happen in specific positions, and you get a build-up of injuries in that one position, and then there's an opportunity for someone you maybe didn't expect to come through. So that's happening a lot. So you can't maybe rule any out. But in terms of at the start of the season now, as the plans are laid, I think those are the two that will be definitely involved in pre-season alongside maybe a couple of other surprise names.
Christian Vehus wants to talk about Mohamed Salah, and who doesn't? He writes, do you think Salah has signed a 2-year contract but internally planned with Liverpool to be sold to Saudi Arabia already next year so that the club still gets a solid transfer fee from him? And if that happened, how much do you think they could get for him? It's tempting thinking about having brought him in for £40 million and potentially selling him for more than that after all those years.
I don't think there would have been any plan laid for that. I don't. I think at the end of the day, Salah wants to break records in the Premier League, and he was, I would argue, the best player in the world last season. So I don't think anybody's thinking, okay, we'll just get another year out of him and then we can sell him to Saudi. At the end of the day, Liverpool are more than happy to lose him on a free, because I mean they've got so much value out of him, and I think it gets a bit of a fixation sometimes on kind of raising funds through sales. And yes, it's part of the strategy, and Liverpool do it well, generally speaking. I think they're going to raise a huge chunk from sales, which would allow them to be in the conversation for Isak later in this window, for example. But it's not the be all and end all. If Liverpool think that they've got value out of the deal and the wages in a whole, they will absolutely do that. They will allow them to go on freeze, and we've seen it several times down the years. So they're not absolutely wed to the idea of getting a transfer fee. So, with Salah, I think if you start to see some decline over the next couple of years, then the move is there for him on a free transfer. And again, Liverpool absolutely happy with that. They rejected huge money for him a couple of summers ago, didn't they, when they could have easily taken that. So, I think this contract is, as the last one was, let's see what we get out of it. Let's see what we're like, where we're up to when we get to the end of it. Maybe there's another one. Maybe there's another 1 year. Maybe there's another 2 years. We'll kind of see how that goes. But I don't think any plans have been laid for him to offer a fee to go to Saudi. And the reason I'm confident about that as well is that I know from his camp, a conversation I had a couple of years ago, really, is that it kind of was put to me that, look, why would Mo leave why would he go for a transfer fee to Saudi? Why would he push to do that when it would make so much more sense from a personal perspective to go there on a free, to get the humongous signing on bonus, to get the wages increased because there's no transfer fee involved? It makes no sense for the player to push for the move when there's money involved, basically. So I think the likelier outcome here really is that Salah leaves on a free in a couple of years. But I mean, hey, if he's still producing at a decent level, I wouldn't be against another 3 years of him or another couple of years on top of that. So it's very much kind of wait and see. I don't think anybody's thinking that far ahead.
But do you think he's going to Saudi one day, regardless, like at the end of his career?
I think surely, because they're going to surely pull out all the stops to get him there at some point. I think he wants to maximise his career in Europe and feel that he can, achieve as many milestones as he can before he does that. But I mean, he's an icon of the Arab world, isn't he? And I mean, the absolute perfect signing for them. So I can imagine that he does go there eventually, but we hope that that's in the far future.
Geir Kåre Henriksen is wondering, could Jeremy Frimpong be a possible Salah replacement in the future with Bradley on the right back position?
I don't think he'll be an out-and-out Salah replacement, to be honest, because Liverpool very much, when he was signed, they talked him up to us as an option in that position, and I think it's something we're going to see this season. Even if it's the last 10 minutes of games to kind of give Salah a rest, or maybe in a League Cup game you could see him start there. It's definitely going to be an option for them to do that, but I don't think he's a long-term replacement there, because I just don't think you can't go from one of the best players, like I said, the best player in the world, I would argue, last season in that position, to a guy who has spent, as good as he is in those advanced positions, he's still ostensibly a right wing back. He is a defender playing in those positions. He's very, very good, but we're talking about unbelievable quality like you've never seen before in that position. So I don't think there's any ideas that he's going to be in the long term a winger. He's just a very sensible option for them in that position throughout this season.
Do you know who is going to be the first choice between him and Bradley?
At the moment, no. It's one that I think is going to kind of settle itself or work itself out in pre-season. I will say, there's huge faith in Bradley. This signing wasn't made to kind of relegate him to second choice. I think it's going to be a genuine competition between the two. And for me, I think people are, because it's a signing, he's the new shiny toy. I think people are, with Frimpong, that people are underrating Bradley a little bit. He's an absolutely immense talent. He's got everything you need to be a success. It's just that question mark over injuries. And, if he can kind of work that out, and because he'll play more regularly, that will help him to overcome those injuries. And that is a theory that Slot holds. Then we'll see the best of him. And it's going to take a lot for anyone to displace him for the team. But as I say, they probably start this pre-season on a kind of even footing, and it's a case of someone making the case that they should be the one that starts that first Premier League game.
Paul Eivind Vehus writes, the vibe seemed fantastic last season. How is it shaping up now? Off the pitch, who is the one player you'd hate to lose? And with some strong characters coming in, do you see any early warning signs? I'm guessing he's thinking of like Kirkus and Frimpong.
What, in terms of a bit of internal discord between the players, or
just big characters coming into the dressing room? It changes dynamics, doesn't it? I
think the thing is that they've got a very strong and established leadership group with Salah and Van Dijk and Liverpool. One of the number one kind of tests for when they sign a player is they have to make sure that the character is right. They will not sign anyone who there's been bad reports on, and they won't just take that from one source. By the way, I mean, I always remember actually that Liverpool's recruitment staff have maybe heard a couple of bad things from the Southampton side about Sadio Mane, and you may have seen it on social media before he signed, and in the end that turned out to be absolute nonsense, didn't he? He was an unbelievable character, really loved in the dressing room, but also a competitor as well, and great in the way he went about his work. So you can sometimes be misled about some of those things and maybe get a wrong impression of players that we see externally. So yeah, I know that Liverpool do the due diligence in terms of this stuff. So I'm pretty confident they'll be coming in, and there won't be any negativity added to the dressing room. And if there is, the characters who run the place now will absolutely make sure that these players are in line. But look at someone like Kirkus, who seems quite outgoing and quite confident, doesn't he? And I know there's been a lot of chat about what was said in those interviews alongside his dad or whatever. But I mean, he's come in there, and I mean, used his first interview to just talk about how good Andy Robertson was. So the respect he has for this dressing room and the people in it, and the opportunities he's got, and a conversation I had yesterday actually as part of an interview, something I'm working on with a coach, and he just said his attitude to his work is absolutely unbelievable and is what made him stand out. So Liverpool always had good characters, and I'm sure the latest bunch will kind of prove that to be true as well.
Are there anyone you're concerned about potentially leaving? Like Andy Robertson, would that affect if he did leave, would that affect the dressing room?
I mean, he would be a big loss because he is a big part of that dressing room, I guess, and has seen it all. And like I say, you have to see it, what Kirk has said to see how respected he is in wider football, but of course at Liverpool as well. But I do think, new people are stepping up all the time, and Alexis McAllister is now a huge figure in the dressing room, and that's obviously only happened over the last couple of seasons. Konate, a lot of people close to it talk about how he's becoming a bit more of a leader these days. So obviously needs to sort his contract out, but he is a good character in the dressing room as well, and really wants to be a leader as part of that. So as you lose some, it is an opportunity for others to step up. So it's not always a bad thing, but of course it is. They are big shoes to fill in terms of being a leader with Robertson, and we wait to see what happens with him.
With Robertson as well, he deserves a big send-off from Anfield the day it goes, so it wouldn't be fitting if he would just leave mid-July, like Henderson also did a couple of years ago.
It's not one that you kind of expected at all. The one thing that kind of raised eyebrows was an interview he did for TV on the final day of the season, actually, where he kind of talked about his future and was a little bit coy about it. And it just made me think, is there something maybe there? And then obviously since then, the Atletico Madrid thing has come out, and I asked a few days ago where that's up to, and I know they are signing another left back, but nobody's kind of seemingly ruling it out yet. So that's an interesting one. We just kind of wait and see on that. But yeah, it is a shame if he does go this summer, because he has been a massive part of it, absolutely loved by supporters. But that's football. Sometimes you don't get the emotional send off, and they do kind of have to sneak out the back door sometimes.
Would be a shame though, yeah. finally, just like to talk a little bit about like the wage structure in Liverpool, because there seems to be quite big like wage disparities between players, if we can believe what the internet tells us. I don't know if I'm guessing that not all the correct numbers are out there, but obviously you got a Salah on, what's he on weekly? 350, 400,000 pounds a week, and then a Curtis Jones who, according to a web page I just looked at, is on £15,000 a week. Is that right?
No, it won't be, I would say. That's the thing. People take it as gospel a lot, and I know that website is in the Capology that people use a lot as a reference for wages. I would say they're never, ever accurate, and in some cases not even close. So, yeah, I wouldn't believe any of the wage things you hear out there, to be honest, or take that as gospel, because, you know, for example, I know there's a lot of talk about Luis Diaz being on £55,000 a week. I believe that that's completely incorrect. He's on a lot more than that. Not crazy money. It's still very reasonable, which is why he kind of wants a pay bump, but it's certainly not as low as maybe is made out. So I would take any kind of information about wages that is out there with a massive pinch of salt, to be honest.
Yeah, but do you think? But obviously there are differences within the team. Do you think that is that causing any disruption at all, or is that just?
No, I think at the end of the day, this is football, and I think everybody recognises it. And I mean, who is going to sit there and argue with Michael Edwards about the fact that Virgil van Dijk is on what he's on and Mo Salah's on what he's on? You know, I don't think anybody's going to take any issue with that, because everybody trains with these guys. They see how good they are, see how important they are, and recognise that they shouldn't be kind of anywhere near them for wages. That's absolutely fair enough, and that they wouldn't get it elsewhere either. Yeah. You know, I sometimes that can cause discord in dressing rooms, because, you know, if you're Manchester United, for example, they gave out some crazy wages, and that caused them issues then in further renewals in terms of it offered benchmarks. But Liverpool are very, very careful in terms of controlling that. And, you know, like I said, nobody's going to argue that they are even close to Mo Salah and that he shouldn't be on one of the world's best wages. So it makes it easy when you're only giving out high wages to players who've absolutely justified it and earned it whilst playing for Liverpool. So, yeah, Liverpool are very kind of canny about that, and that is a good way of avoiding issues. I would imagine, by the way, just on Curtis Jones, he will be on much more than that, I imagine.
Looking at the social media of the players and how they're spending their vacation, it doesn't look like any of them are suffering, at least.
yeah, exactly. And to be honest, yeah, if Curtis Jones is on that and he's not happy, I would happily take that if anyone wants to offer that to me. Unfortunately, that's not happened yet, but yeah.
But the Luis Diaz chat, so they say that his camp is not happy about how Liverpool have played things. And can you just summarise that for me? Because I don't think I quite understand what's happened there.
Yeah, so the talk is, and this is just reading the reports from that side, I can't say I'm personally particularly close to his camp. You know, that's kind of how it is. Some players you manage to get close to, others maybe not. But it seems from those reports that he's kind of surprised that there hasn't been a contract discussion this summer. And I have to say, I am absolutely blown away by that, if I'm honest, because, you know, certainly from Liverpool's side of things, I've never at any point believed or felt that there was anything heading towards contract discussion here. I mean, you could judge that from the outside. It's not just that sources were telling me that, but it seemed pretty obvious to me, because he's 28 years old. He's on a fairly reasonable wage. He's versatile. He's flexible. You know, he's a very, very good player and all those things. But Liverpool out in panic stations here, where it's like, we need to give this guy a pay bump when he's turning 29 soonish. It's like, why would you do that? You know, the sensible thing to do with Luis Diaz is kind of ride that decent contract for a little bit longer. You know, don't give him a contract that will take him way past his peak years. And, you know, maybe he's one that you, because you don't want to give him that pay bump, that you allow to ride his contract out to the end, and he leaves on a free transfers with everyone's best wishes. So I'm surprised that they were surprised there was no contract talks, to be honest. But obviously it's something that's kind of rankled a little bit, and they're not happy about that. And I guess it moves you more towards a situation where a sale is possible. But I would say for Liverpool, there's not a huge incentive to sell a player who can play multiple positions, works his socks off every time he takes to the pitch, and, as I say, is on a, you know, not as low as is made out, but a relatively low wage, you know, for someone of the contributions he makes. So, you know, to change it now for anything to happen, I think he has to green light a Saudi move, and that money has to come in from Al Nassr, but we're not at that point yet. I don't get the impression he has said that he wants to go to Saudi yet, because I think the offer would be in there now. And I think that's the big discussion he has to have, because the options aren't there in Europe for the kind of money that would give Liverpool the decision to make. I think that's only going to come from Saudi Arabia. So we wait and see for that to happen, really. But it's, I was kind of surprised by those reports that they felt there was going to be a big contract offer on the table this summer, because I could have told them there wasn't going to be, and I think anybody could have.
Right. So just to go back to wrap it up a bit, but go back to Isak, full circle moments here. If Liverpool were to get a green light for Alexander Isak, they would have to sell, wouldn't they? And
without question. They need to raise more funds to do more business, not because like money's tight. They're in a really good PSR position. They've got unbelievable amount of headroom on that front, but the way the club's run in a sustainable way, it makes more sense to raise funds. And obviously they can do that without too much pain as well. I mean, nobody's hugely keen to see Darwin Nunez in the squad next season, are they? And that's already a big chunk of money. If that crazy money comes for Luis Diaz because of his age, because of his contract situation, it absolutely makes sense to accept that. And Harvey Elliott barely played last season, and there's money to be got from him. Similarly with Federico Chiesa. So you can all of a sudden, you can build up a kitty again, and then you can put you in the conversation for an Alexander Isak. So, those sales need to happen, not just to raise the money, but to open up spaces in the squad. But all of that feels incredibly feasible. And then you throw in the fact that nobody's shooting it down. It's just why that feels like that's a move that could happen. You've got to cross those, get over those hurdles before that happens. But it all feels hugely possible. So it could be a really exciting few weeks in terms of this one.
I'm looking forward to when they turn a profit this window as well. Then the FSG out to brigade will return.
Still, I had someone walk past my house the other day. I got loads of Evertonians on my road, and I just heard, I don't know what they were talking about, but I just heard one of them shout, "Oh, it's the Coutinho money again." No idea what that was about, but they'll never let it go. Right. We will call it there then. Thank you so much for joining us, David. Insightful as always.
No, thank you for having me. A pleasure.
Good. Vi skal forsøke å holde podcasten gående gjennom sommeren, for det sommerferie, men jeg tror ikke Richard Hughes ligger på noen solseng riktig enda. Så dersom du har noen spørsmål til oss, så innboksen alltid åpen. Pausepraten @liverpool.no adressen. Takk for nå.